got next here? Graphing. So this is records created in 2006 by the month they were created and who the salesman is who's responsible for them. So this is a typical kind of report that you might do if you're a sales manager, right? You want to know how we assigned our reports and our leads, and when did those leads come in? Well, these leads came in the year 2006, and like that, month by month. A graphical view of that, of course, is useful, and I think you all know that you can hit a button to graph. And when you create that graph, it's on a different tab within the same workbook. A lot of people don't know that you can actually choose the location for where that graph shows up and actually have the graph show up on the same page, for instance, as the table. So if I go over to the graph here and I right-click on it, go down here to location. Now, in Office 2007, you actually have up at the top here in your ribbon, your control ribbon, there's a button there, I think, that says location. So that would be where you would do that. But you can choose the location, say, let's have it on its own sheet, or you can have it as an object in any of the existing sheets. So what you see in this drop-down here is the names of all the existing worksheets in this workbook. And I'll go to SR by rec type, which is the one that it derives from. Say OK, and that actually moves the chart into the same table here with me. And I've got a lot of control about how this chart is going to be displayed. If I don't want to see the color coding, the legend over here, I can right-click on the legend and hide it. Or, whoops, Control Z on that. I think I clicked the wrong thing there. So that one, okay, clears the legend there. With my settings, I can make it so these selection buttons don't show up at the top, so that I'm actually controlling it from the pivot table itself. Again, that's just an option there. Used to have that. There we go. Hide the chart field buttons. And now I can actually control this from over here. So if I wanted to have this show 2007, when I change that, you see my chart also updates along with it. And that can be a digital dashboard kind of approach to your Goldmine data, where you have a table and a chart that interact with each other. Now this chart also, because when you're in Excel and you are selected on the chart, you have a toolbar that applies specifically to the chart. Of course, if you're in Office 2007, you'll have a whole ribbon that relates to the chart based on the context of what you have selected. One of the things I like to do is go in here and choose a different kind of chart based on options that are in here, or what I'm really looking for is a different kind of chart type. And I like to take my bars and, let's say, sometimes stack them, because that visually still gets me to something that's somewhat simpler, but also meaningful. Namely, here's my month-by-month breakdown, but my item that's in the column area then gets differentiated by color. Where before these were all side-by-side bars, now I can see actually the total is 9 in January, but they break out by sales rep this way. Okay, so that's just kind of charting and flexibilities that you have together with that. Let's get into one that's a little bit more interesting. Let's say using dates in the data area. So let's see, that is dates in the data area. Okay, so here's another trick that I was starting to sort of get towards. So let's say some people don't know that you can actually have multiple tables in the same worksheet, and this is very quick. If I wanted to have this table show up on this worksheet, sometimes you might think, oh, well, I can just copy that right there, and I'll copy this and I'll paste it to the other one. The problem here is we don't have the entire pivot table encompassed by our selection, so you would need to encompass the entire table, but if you do, then you can take that, you can copy it, go over, let's say I'm going to paste this on the same sheet with the other one. It's still a working, functioning pivot table here. I can still move the things in and out, and that sort of has me wind up with what I get toward here is kind of a digital dashboard. I can actually set up multiple copies of the same thing. In this case, I'm going to Control-0 on that, or Control-Z to move back on there. You might also do something like this, do different copies of the same of the pivot table that's on the very same page that you're on, and do this one in different forms. The main thing to remember here is the things like the pivot table field list. This is the field list for this pivot table. How do I know? Because I've got a cell selected on this pivot table. If I go off of it, I don't have that list. If I go on a different pivot table, now that's the field list that belongs with this other pivot table. So that's something to be aware of, that it is sensitive to what cell you have selected, what location you're in. And then you could, do the same thing with the chart. You can copy the chart and have that be here. have a chart here that applies to this table. So you really can get this down to a very nice dashboard here. Here's a trick that works with Updater, and this is one that I kind of like. Come up with a good scenario for this. I want to do Updater for a particular set of records.